good homes affordable for all. Far too many people live in housing that falls well short of that aim. The National Housing Federation records that 8 million people in England live in unsuitable, unaffordable or unsafe housing. The Grenfell tragedy reminds us of the urgency of removing unsafe cladding from buildings without the costs falling on leaseholders. The vote in the other place to overturn your Lordship's very clear amendment on this subject is, frankly, a great tragedy and grave error. I will leave it to my friend, the Right Reverend Prelate, the Bishop of Manchester, to comment further. As for the long term, my lords, we must, of course, build more homes. No one questions that. But there is no use building more homes if people cannot afford to buy them or rent them, and then cannot afford to live in them. Affordability is as important as availability. As a nation, we need an agreed vision in the same way as we have one that is beyond politics for the NHS. There is also a sixth S, which runs through this report, and which needs to be at the core of everyone's response to the housing crisis, and that is sacrifice. No one, not even government, can solve this on its own. Historic failure under all parties shows that. The Church wants to partner with other institutions on the ground, faith groups, local government, charities, housing associations, developers, and anyone else who wants to work with us. But to transform our housing landscape, there is a need for sacrifice, which will be required from all of us, whether we're individuals inclined to NIMBYism, organisations and companies whose primary concern is profit, or governments whose priorities are influenced by short-term election cycles. As the report says, now is the time for a bold, coherent, long-term housing vision which focuses on those who are facing the greatest need and which can be supported by all parties. Good housing, affordable for all. Millions of people have stayed in their homes to protect their fellow human beings this year. Let's repay them by making sure everyone has a home which is sustainable, safe, secure, sociable and satisfying.
My Lords, I cannot let this opportunity pass without some reference to one piece of legislation currently before Parliament. It is my privilege to support a group called the Manchester Gladiators. Its members are leaseholders in high and medium-rise buildings who've been caught up in the aftermath of the dreadful tragedy of Grenfell Tower. The ramifications of that disaster reach much wider than merely to residents of high-rise blocks beset by poor cladding. The deaths at Grenfell have, like the deaths of George Floyd and Sarah Everard, made our society aware of more widespread failings, albeit in this case in our physical rather than our social fabric. Many buildings formerly considered safe and homes in them bought on that basis are now deemed sufficiently at risk as to be unmortgageable. Residents who may need to move for work or family reasons are trapped. Some are facing service charges and bills, orders of magnitude higher than in previous years, in order to pay for waking watchers, insurance, or building refurbishment. In many cases, the freeholder is little more than the shell mechanism through which leaseholders pay their service charges, not the developer who constructed the block. This is, my lords, a problem too big for anyone other than government to solve, and too urgent for it to be allowed to fester a moment longer. I would ask the noble Lord the Minister, will he speak with his Treasury colleagues and use his good offices to gain their commitment to attending the next meeting that he and his ministry are due to have with the End Our Cladding Scandal campaign?